Very good evening and Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, Dr. Farooq Musa, Chairman, IRF, Dr. Azzam Tamimi, our guest speaker for tonight, Dato Dr. Oi Keng B. Beng, Executive Director of the Penang Institute. Welcome to this public lecture event jointly organized by IRF and Penang Institute on the evolution of Islamic political thought. The title itself implies that there has been an evolution or transformation among those political parties in the Muslim world subscribing to the Islamic political thought. Case in point, Ennahda in Tunisia has recently announced that they will embrace a party of Muslim Democrats rather than a party of Islamists. Such kind of bifurcation between Muslim Democrats and Islamists has recently occurred in Malaysia as well, as you know, emulating the example of Ghanouchi's Ennahda. So what does this evolution of approach amounts to, if anything, and what are the implications and what are the prospects? Is this a historical transition, if so, as hailed by some, or it's just another rebranding game of labels and names? What is at stake for Islamic political thought in this so-called post-Islamism era? Who else to tackle these questions better than our guest speaker for tonight, Dr. Azzam Tamimi, a British Palestinian academician and political activist. He has been our guest for our events before, has been many times in programs in Malaysia. Currently is the director of the Institute for Islamic Political Thought in London and has authored several books on the subject matter. Actually, one of those books will be launched tomorrow, tomorrow afternoon, same venue. I think the title of the book is Rashid Ghanouchi, A Democrat Within Islamism. Its Bahasa version tomorrow will be launched here, so you may welcome, if keen and free to join. But before we pass the stage to our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Azzam, I'd like to say a few words about Dato Oi Keng Beng, who will be presenting his welcoming speech tonight. Currently, Dr. Oi is the Executive Director for the Penang Institute. Prior to this, he was the Deputy Director of ISEAS, Yusuf Ishak Institute in Singapore. Dr. Beng has been a long-term lecturer in Chinese political philosophy and Chinese history at Stockholm University. His latest books include The Euro-Asian Core and Its Edges, Dialogues with Wang Gungwu on the History of the World. It sounds already very interesting. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Beng for his welcoming speech. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm most honored to be here in this illustrious company. I drove down all the way from Penang only this afternoon just to listen to Dr. Azzam Tamimi. And I'll be driving up again after the talk. I have to say, we have a very long country. So thank you to my old friend, Farooq Musa, and to Islamic Renaissance Front for being willing to let Penang Institute help sponsor tonight's event. The Institute is most grateful for the opportunity. We are based in Penang, up north, as you know, and we have lately been investing a lot of resources into launching books and encouraging authors to interact with their potential readers. This is in keeping with our belief that Malaysia is in dire need, let me repeat, dire need, of raising the intellectual level of our public discourses, and definitely the level of our political discourses. In fact, we recently launched a book prize to be awarded every year to a book of historical fiction that has Malaysia as a backdrop. So that's a note to all of you. If you want to write a book about Malaysia, then there's a chance for you to win a book prize from the Penang Institute. I'm very happy that the Institute is given a chance to support tonight's event and to host Dr. Tamimi. What better way to carry out dialogues and to sharpen our thinking than to have serious partners like the Islamic Renaissance Front. There are not that many serious such organizations in Malaysia today, as you might know. Now, one thing I've learned about religions, and it is this. A religion is more than the discourses that are used to define it. In fact, discourses are often meant to confine rather than to define a religion. And religions, once defined, easily become a tool of political power. Thus, there's an unavoidable dialectic in all religions between its spiritual values and its socio-economic or socio-political impact. And it is this exciting and painful relationship that the title of the talk tonight, The Evolution of Islamic Political Thought, tries to express, in the specific case of the Islamic tradition. This relationship is not an easy one to illustrate because not only is it a shifting one, it is a highly emotional one. Therefore, one has to look for the results manifested concretely in people's lives to know what the nature of a religious teaching or act really is. To call something merely Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or even atheist, or to consider something typically Chinese or Indian or Malay, is to always run the risk of being misunderstood or being consciously or unconsciously misleading. If nothing else, it diminishes humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, I remember a conversation I had many years ago with a famous professor from University Kebangsaan, Malaysia, Professor Shamsul Amri Baharuddin, an anthropologist. Many of you would have heard of him. He was a very young man then, as was I. I asked him a question that still puzzles many Southeast Asians today. The question is, how did it come about that Islam managed to spread so effectively in Southeast Asia to the extent that it, without the use of arms, subsumed all the earlier kingdoms in the Nusantara under it? His answer to me, and I hope I did not understand him here, was that Islam came as a liberator from power, a liberator from established power that had slowly but steadily suppressed common people for too long. But I'm sure that as Islam established itself and formed new relationships with power in the region, a struggle ensued between Islam as a liberating philosophy and Islam as the new clothes that old power could change into. The notion of the evolution of political thought is of great interest to me because it expresses and embraces the constant struggle that must occur within the management of human affairs between power on one hand and its social and cultural effects on the other. Over time, paths are worked out which try to limit power and to stop it from being despotic, and to instead steer it towards working for a common good. It is a difficult and an unending struggle, one that has to be fought anew by every generation. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was living and studying in Sweden as a young man, learning about the Swedish system of public management, I grew very interested in alternative traditions of social management. I thus began studying sinology, which basically is a hugely interdisciplinary subject where you learn about anything Chinese. Chinese history, Chinese food, Chinese medicine, Chinese kung fu, Chinese art. I wanted to learn what the tradition of Chinese political thought and philosophy is as an alternative tradition. Now, what I learned from Chinese studies is that there are no contradictions in reality. Contradictions exist only in the words we choose to use. You see what I mean in the word itself, contradiction. Contra on one side and diction on the other, a disagreement in the words used, right? It is often through languages and discourses that we are separated, and mistakenly so, as if by essence. Otherwise, there are only forces acting upon each other, and words, arguments, debates are simply some of the forms those forces take. Now, in Chinese, the word for contradiction is Mao Tun, which literally means spear and shield. Now, there's an interesting story behind this. There was once a street salesman, the story goes, who, when selling spears, would boast that his spears could pierce any material at all. Sorry to say, he also sold shields, which he claimed could not be pierced by any material either. So clearly, in making these claims, he created a contradiction, a mautun, through his carelessness and his overstretch of logic. I'm sure all of us are often too categorical with our words, and we create contradictions that we then do not care to correct. How often do we not do this as a society? Quite often, I think. And then by being more concerned and captivated with words than actions, we go into conflict. And all because we created a careless contradiction that could have been avoided. And careless words then put into action lead to tension, and contradictions which don't exist in real life become real conflicts. Another thing I learned in studying different traditions is that we do rely a lot on analogies, metaphors, and associations when we think. We wax poetic without knowing it. And very often, we do not know when to stop. We go too far, and we very often forget that we are merely being poetic, and we mistake a literary device for a logical claim. So again, what we need to do is look at the long-term results of our practices more than at the words used in order to judge what the good sides and what the bad sides of any of our practices actually are. So the struggle between the good and the bad sides of power goes on and has always gone on in all parts of the world, in all traditions. And in each of these traditions, the nature of the struggles varies as well. These struggles are not a simple tug of war. Every battle changes the direction and the language of the war, and the search to steer human development in the right direction towards making power a liberating force and not a despotic one. That is how I would describe this epic conflict. Now, I know nothing about the Muslim tradition or the Arabic one, so I look very much forward to listening to Dr. Azzam Tamimi tonight and to learn from him. I think I've spoken too much, please excuse me. You are not here to listen to me, so let me hand the word back to Ms. Alma Barissa as we prepare to listen to the wise words of our honored guests of the night. Thank you again all for coming and for your attention. Thank you.